the number one cause of disease is stress, right? If you think of like all the diseases, right? And like what causes that, usually it's stress. And then the number one cause of stress is someone's immediate boss. You kind of play the logic game of like, all right, so bosses are really causing problems in society if they're bad. And no boss like wakes up and is like, I'm going to be a bad boss today. I'm going to be a bad leader. And in some cases, this is morbid, but like if they're a better leader, less people die.
How multi-potentialite can make a real difference. Hi, friends. It's Diane here at Someone Gets Me, and I have a really cool guest. So I suggest you get your tea or your coffee and probably a notebook because you're going to want to take notes. I have my new friend, John Horton, with me. And actually, we connected through LinkedIn. And actually, he reached out to me, and I'm like, I don't know. People are always trying to market me. And he wasn't one of those people. He was this really cool person, and we've had many great conversations since then. And so I invited him on the show because he is a great example of how you, a multi-potentialite, can bring all kinds of things together to make a very nice, beautiful life. And that is balanced with equilibrium. So John's taking time out of his busy day to be with us today. And so welcome to Someone Gets Me, John. Thank you for coming on the show with us.
Really excited to be here. Thank you. Thanks for answering answering my random message. So yeah, very excited for that.
It's so funny how my intuition was like, because I use that so much, was said, well, answer that one. And I get like, I don't even know, several hundred a week of different people reaching out to me. In fact, I should probably silence my phone now. And something told me to answer you. And then when we get on the call and we're talking, I'm like, oh my God, he's so cool. So I'm so glad you said yes, because you are a multi-potentialite. And I wanted to have everybody meet you. So I'd like to start with you giving us a little bit of a story about kind of how your life has unfolded. You do everything. You're an athlete. You've trained people. You've published in journals. You worked with entrepreneurs, do really cool assessments. And I got to take one of that you're going to talk about, I'm sure. And you do all these really magical things that seem different, but somehow you bring them together. So tell us a little bit about how all this kind of unfolded.
Yeah, it really did start with my father. My father was my mom and dad were very smart people, so that definitely helped. But my dad was a big believer in IQ, and he called it imagination quotient. So it was really facilitated as a child. It was really facilitated for me to have a really rich imagination. My father was a creative, but think of like a I like to kind of joke and say like a dirty redneck creative, like if I can kind of be crass a little bit, because my dad was from South Georgia and was subject matter expert on like ultrasound machines. So like he was almost like like a specialized tradesman. And my mom actually was an ultrasonographer. So she was sort of specialized, and they did kind of the same stuff over and over, but they had these really rich creative lives. Like my mom's this really prolific drawer and painter. And my dad just had all these different like side hustles and businesses and stuff. And so, I think it was just very natural for my sister and I to have an imagination, to pretend a lot and to make stuff up and all that. And it kind of just rolled into, I think I see it now after having studied psychology, it rolled into just being a creative. And that has a lot of implications into being like a multi-potentialite. But it started in childhood with, basically the whole statement of you can be anything you want to be. And then that turned into, okay, now what do you want to be? And like, I don't know, like we'll pick something like this and like, great, go do that. And we did it and all that. And so we were just I was always playing some type of sport. I was always encouraged to do very well in school, which meant all subjects. And I think like aptitude, trying to be good at everything, no matter how neurotic I was in that pursuit, definitely led to like, okay, well, here's how you get good at a series of games, like this game and that game and this game. That translated into, okay, well, what's one of the big games that you want to play? And it turned into, well, like, I like people. I like people in a variety of different settings. So how about psychology? And that was a commitment that I'd sort of made in Even before college, I was like, I'm going to study psychology. That's going to remember being 17, taking AP Psych and like reading the AP Psych book for fun. And I was like, yeah, okay, great. This is one of the first things I had Googled when the internet became like more ubiquitous in our home. Like, all right, cool. I'm gonna Google Freud and figure out personality and stuff like that. So anyway, a big, as you can imagine with most creatives, there's a lot of rambling. I'm a creative extrovert, so lots of rambling from me, but that's sort of the start. It came from childhood and it came from encouragement to use my imagination.
Oh, that's really, really cool. My parents were academic. My mom was more of an academic than my dad. And I read psych books first too. And I'm like, why? I have to go be a psychiatrist. I have to go to medical school, be a psychiatrist. And I got to college at University of Florida in Gainesville. Go Gators,
Nice.
Right?
Go Gators.
We are recording this day after they just won the men's NCAA basketball championship. So we're very happy. And all of you who are watching this on YouTube, be grateful that I'm not wearing my orange and blue because it was really close.
Yeah.
Because I'm really excited, but I was at the school. I digress. I was at the school and I remember thinking I was going to go to medical school. And I'm like, but I really want to do the psychology too. And I want to do psychiatry. And I'm like, no, but I want to do the people part. Yeah. Even though I'm 100% introverted on the Myers-Briggs, I'm totally introverted, but I wanted to do the people part. And so I did psychology. And I'm actually on the advisory board for the psychology department of the University of Florida currently. And so I have a real love for that. So when you're talking about reading the psychology book, I'm like, yes, it's so fun to learn about people.
It is.
It's really fun. So I have a burning question that maybe takes off the timeline a little bit. You do assessments with people. Mm-hmm. And so I would like to know how, or I would like you to share, I guess, more about how you got into doing the assessments part that goes with the psychology. Because to me, they're like hand in glove, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I would love to know how that kind of went that way.
I mean, the punchline is I needed a job after grad school.
There you go.
I was sort of faced with the dilemma that I think every psych student is faced with of like, all right, cool. Like, I know about all this theory. That's really awesome. It's like, cool. Now what do I do? Go get a job, dude. So yeah, it was either Starbucks or Hogan. I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, really. So I never, first off, I had no idea that assessments were really a thing. It wasn't a big part of the course, like the courses that I was taking. It certainly wasn't a part of like publications, like the labs that I was involved in. The labs that I were involved in were cognitive labs, specifically working memory. So like there was an assessment associated with that. But like the thought of working for an assessment publisher, like even I've been with Hogan for 9 years now. It's incredibly exciting work. It's the most engaging and like flow state inducing, exciting work. But even now, as I say, like assessment publisher, I'm bored immediately. You know what I mean?
Right.
So anyway, so like I really was like after grad school, I was kind of like shopping around for jobs and whatnot. I got my master's at the University of North Florida, go Ospreys. And I was just like, okay, I can go back to school for a PhD or I can apply this stuff. And I already had kind of like a business mind. And I had a sales background. So I wanted to get in and like, as my dad would say, like feel my money, like, start to work. And there was an opening for a position as a senior account manager at Hogan, specifically for the Independent Consultants Network. And there was a little opening here in Jacksonville at an office. And I applied for it. It was as the more I learned about it, the cooler the job was. And it was funny. It's like I didn't know Hogan was Hogan until I started. I was probably like 6 months in and I realized like where I was actually at, where I'm like, whoa, it's kind of like, I don't know if McKinsey is like one of the pinnacles of like consulting, Hogan is absolutely one of, if not the pinnacle of assessments, like serious assessments. And I didn't know that until I got into it. I rambled my way into a big circle. And I think the original question was like, how did I fall into this? I mean, it really was, I needed a job. I sort of stumbled upon it. I've stayed at Hogan for so long for a variety of reasons. I mean, like, first off, the people are incredible. Like we've got like Dr. Hogan and Wendy Hogan live like 45 minutes north of me. Like I can go have lunch with them at their restaurants in Amelia Island. Like we can talk theory and then talk about sports and how it applies and all that stuff. So there's always this like very rich intellectual culture that's there that facilitates these crazy thoughts, like this really truly cutting edge stuff. It's really awesome. But then the people that I've worked with, I mean, people like you, like all the people in our independent consultants network, they're just these really freaking fabulous people who are super there's oh man, like they're dedicated to helping people, right? So like, and that aligns with my values around altruism. They're usually really smart. I say usually only because I'm hedging my bets. All of them are smart. They're mostly entrepreneurial. I like to call them hustlers, but with all the positive connotation of that. So I'm just around these people that are solving real problems. Like a leader comes in, if they do poorly, they make people's lives worse. If they do better, they make people's lives better. And the executive coaches and recruiters that I work with are trying to make things better. And I get to be a part of that. And so like, you realize that you kind of like realize what the job is a few months into it. And you're like, oh man, this is so freaking cool. So I've stayed, and I've actually stayed in the ICN my entire tenure at Hogan because the problems are just amazing to be a part of solving. And so, yeah, so I got there accidentally, and I've stayed like on purpose. So yeah, that's the big story.
That's really cool, because a lot of times people like get a job and they don't really realize what they're getting into. Or they don't realize what it can develop into. And I think that being open-minded and paying attention to where you landed and the opportunity and the excitement about it has paid off, right? And so I think it's a natural thing for us gifted people who are especially multipotentialites, is to have that natural sense of curiosity, to want to know more or get to understand and delve into things and dive deep into things. And so it just sounds like that's what you naturally did. Like you got this cool job because you needed one. And then it's like, whoa, look where I landed. And then there's all these things that open up to you.
And just to respond to that, like I am 100 out of 100 on our, I'm in the 100th percentile for our, what's our called inquisitive scale, which is, if you know anything about personality, I know you do, but for the audience, this is openness to experience. So like, I'm not like wildly productively creative, like outside of work. Like I haven't like done a bunch of creative stuff like too much, but like within work, I've really put a lot of like creative work into things and like effectively like publish stuff. But I'm really, really open-minded. And even for people who aren't like that, who are on the opposite end of the spectrum, I think there's still ways to like explore your own nature to a point where like you've kind of moved, because exploration is pretty natural for us. It's like it's like in your hypothalamus or something like that. Like it's a really, really old thing for us to do, like as like mammals and whatnot, right? So like everyone's exploratory to some degree. There's definitely individual differences, but like I think what it is like if you know your nature, if you're aware of your nature, then you get to explore in that style within an environment that is appropriate for you or gives you joy or something like that. There's even individual differences to that, right? So anyway, sometimes like knowing that I'm so high on one end or so far on one end of the spectrum, like I don't want to like leave people out if they're like, well, I'm not naturally curious. It's like there's no morality associated with that. Like that's not a bad thing. There's not a good thing that I am curious. Like it actually gets in the way a lot. So anyway, I just wanted to detach the morality from that, because I think sometimes that does happen. Where it's like, I'm not curious. Like this doesn't apply to me. It's like, it absolutely does.
I have a lot of clients in mind that are naturally very curious, because a common trait with gifted people and neurodivergent people is that sense of curiosity and diving deep into things. And then when I've learned whatever it is I think I need to learn or I'm done, then I'm off to something else.
For sure.
And so it can get in the way. I'm glad you brought that up. It's like, yeah, it's a great thing, but it also has another side to it, just like everything. There's no right or wrong, because
exactly.
It's more about how you harness the things and you use them for your benefit. So you brought up something a minute ago, and I want to have you weave into this athletic.
Yeah.
Because you're an athlete and you're also multipotentialite, you're also gifted. So, and athletics has a lot to do, I think, with how we actually bring and synthesize all of this together. It doesn't have to be formal athletics, but being active, moving our body, living out our experience. And so will you share a little bit about what you do athletically and how that helps you bring your essence, you bring your light to the world? Like, how does that work? Because it's not just, you're not just in your head. Like, it's great that you're academic and you're smart, curious, but there's more. So how does it come together?
Okay, so we've all seen like probably a lot of us have seen like Remember the Titans and Friday Night Lights and like Varsity Blues and all that, like the West Texas football and all that, and how like everyone sort of grows up in a football culture, like as kids and all that. That was definitely the town that I grew up in. It was it was a kind of, it's North Florida, but basically if you know anything about North Florida, like it's South Georgia, like we're 10 minutes south of the Georgia line. So it's like, that's South Georgia, dude. Right. So sort of grew up with this, with, like my parents always, I was absolutely ADHD as a kid. Like I had to be moving around and whatnot. My parents refused to medicate me, which I thank them for now. But what that meant is like I had to be really conscientious to be good in school because I was a very well-disciplined child. But then outside of that, my dad sort of framed it as like, you're a warrior. Like sports are simulated war. Let's be honest. He didn't start telling me that as a kid. He wasn't like, oh, you're a warrior, get out there. And I sort of saw that later. So anyway, I say all that to say, like, there was this very disciplined side of studious, like learner, straight A student, all that type of thing. And then there was like this more unbridled, like get out there and like, crack some skulls type of thing. And that started as just playing football. Then it turned into soccer because you can't play football by yourself, and we had a little bit of land, but I could kick the soccer ball around by myself. It was also something that my sister and I could compete with up to a certain point. So I played football and I played soccer. And then that led to playing tennis. We had a basketball goal. My dad liked to play basketball with me. So I was kind of always playing different sports and whatnot up through high school. Then it took a little break in college, but like worked out and stuff and just was really missing it. When I started grad school, I started playing rugby. And I don't know, I can't even remember how I really got into it, but I just showed up at practice one day. And well, this is actually kind of cool. So I showed up to practice one day, and within one or two practices, I got a nickname. I'd never received a nickname before. The nickname is FYJ. I can't tell you what that means because this is a family show, but it was a dubbing almost, right? And like it was a change in identity.
Yes.
Because I was like this person that I'm in grad school, that I'm going to be a very serious person and whatnot. And then like rugby was just different. And anyone who's like played around or dabbled in rugby or knows anything about rugby culture, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like it's wild, and you have to be kind of wild to play rugby. Anyway, so rugby was nuts because it was such a different cultural sport, and it was such a high intensity, high consequence sport that just took all of your focus to be good at it. I mean, there's like really smart people who play rugby, and then there's like the really physically gifted people who play rugby, and maybe not always like the multipotentialites, as we would call them. But either way, it's this big mesh of stuff, and it just took all of my focus. And it was this great thing to do right out of, outside of like classes in grad school. That led to me coaching rugby. So this was a new journey of like, oh man, I'm a leader, and this is one of my first forays. I'm going to say that wrong. One of my first stints as a leader, where there was like, again, there was true consequences. And then now that has led into, I stopped playing rugby, stopped coaching it after probably 7 years or so. And I'm doing jujitsu now. And again, I find myself like, I'm in kind of the land of the fool, where I'm not good at it. I'm getting beat a lot. I'm a dominant person, so getting beat is not comfortable for me. But how do I live in that comfort in order to like find gold behind the dragon type of deal? And it is so technical, and I can do it for so long, like so many years, that it's this fun journey that I'm on, where I'm like, hey, I didn't get tapped out at, once the last session. Like I got to go again today, see if I don't get tapped out by a higher belt, like that type of thing. So I know I'm just basically telling you all the sports that I played. But the kind of the through line of all of it was I've always been active for some particular purpose, and my life has always been better when I'm doing some type of sport. Um, the brain is the body, right? I know we detach it of like, oh, there's brain and there's your body. And it's like, but it's the same thing. And I know that at least in my life and my experience, like bad things happen when I'm not moving, like bad things happen when I'm staying still. And so sports in whatever regard give me it's another venue. It's another venue to be intelligent. It's another venue to lead. It's another venue to make a meaningful impact on people, to learn things, to teach people things. And I see it the same way as like if I were to join a chess club or if I were to join a consulting group or something like that. It's just another venue to experience life, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, let me pause there because I felt rambly again.
That's true. It's another way to experience life. And I even had somebody I worked with recently. He even said he wasn't really in touch with his body. And I said, well, put your hands on like the top of your knees on your quads and feel your skin. And he started weeping because he never really thought about feeling his own skin.
Yeah.
And he was an adult person with like 4 teenage daughters, and he just never slowed down enough to really appreciate the feel of his own being, and because he was so over rewarded for his intellect, because he's a genius, and was missing out on all the depth and richness of the rest of his life.
I love that. It inspired a story in my brain. There's a few people who come through that when I was coaching rugby, there was a few people who would come through, and I'm sure if anyone's ever played any sports, like there's obviously the dedicated people who've played the sport before, who have been natural athletes and whatnot. And then there's like the people who are kind of just trying it out. And I was listening to a lecturer talk about the importance of rough and tumble play, usually with fathers and their children, and how he could tell the kids who weren't comfortable with their body because they hadn't been twisted around and kind of like pushed too far, and then they were too aggressive and receive those natural boundaries and whatnot because their parents sit and wrestle with them, right? And then he could tell the ones that did have that experience. And I could tell the same thing in rugby, right? I could tell the same thing when a kid comes out, and I always do like a little mini interview. Hey, what sports have you played before? And I always loved the most inspiring times that I can remember as a coach were when someone comes out and I'm like, what sports have you played? None. Like, so you've never played a sport before and you're starting with rugby, like collegiate D1 rugby. I'm like, cool. All right, let's go, bud. Like I can take that spirit, right? There's always the awkwardness and whatnot, like learning the sport. And that's like kind of natural. That's not really exciting. But what is exciting is when there's been a few times, and this pattern has been the same across people like this, is there's this kind of like person who doesn't know how to use their body. And I call it like unlocking the warrior,
right?
When they're sort of in this tribe now, they're accepted in the tribe. They sometimes even have a name, right? Like a new name, but they don't know how to be as effective as they could be. And I remember one kid, he was kind of like, we're doing these drills and whatnot. And he'd run up and he kind of like, oh, I don't want to hurt you. It's a big kid. I mean, he could really hurt you if he knew how to use his body. It's like, oh, I don't want to really hurt you. And he's kind of like pulling back last minute, and he could not break it. He could not break that pattern. And I remember I was at the time, I had recently listened to a lecture around agreeableness and defensive aggression. And I said, do you have a sister? Do you have family members that are females or someone that you would protect or something like that? And he's like, yeah, I do. And it's like, you need to consider yourself as a protector, and that this action that I'm asking you to do is a function of you protecting them, not as an aggression towards me, because you're not an aggressive person. You are a defensive person. And that unlocked it. And so in the same way of like feeling the thighs or feeling the knees, I'm like, oh, this is in touch with something that I hadn't connected with before. This was also a moment for him where he smacked the crap out of me after that, right? He was pretty good. But he needed almost that permission of like, I can hurt someone on behalf of someone else, in an agreed upon game. But that wasn't a part of his nature before that, right? It was like this block of like, he had this rule going of don't hurt anybody. And it's like, no, you can't do that. You have to not hurt anyone unless XYZ is true. And so that was a matter of unlocking XYZ. So anyway, that story was came up in my head, just about like kind of shifting things via sports or via something physical, shifting a mindset.
Right. I think that is a really good one. In fact, I remember there was a similar kind of unlocking at the blind side.
Yeah.
Remember?
Oh, yeah.
You're protecting your family.
Right,
Remember?
right.
Protecting them, and
Good
it
call.
changed his whole
Yes.
and because he didn't want to be aggressive, but when he had it a different view. And so I think it's the belief system that we are running behind everything. You know, I was raised racing sailboats from the time I could breathe practically. And at the time it was an all male sport. And then there was me, the little 4'11" blonde girl. And my brother used to insult other boys when we were younger and go, even my sister can do it better than you. And he's genius himself and a really good sailor. And so it's like, but it was the physicalness and the athleticism. And I was also swimming and doing other things that kept me, even though I'm really smart, like in my body.
Yes.
More maybe than a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. And I've grown more in that as I've gotten older, and I realized like, hey, wait a second, there's more. There's always more.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
But I think that's key. I think it's key for gifted multipotentialite people to have a physical outlet. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've worked with in the past and currently that if they don't have a physical outlet, they get depressed. They start feeling nihilistic, maybe. They have a really hard time, and then their focus goes down, and it's really difficult to make transition or momentum without some kind of way to expend the energy in the body and keep the flow going. And I think that's the point you're making, that how valuable that is. And it's important. You know, it's not just an extra thing. It's an important part of life.
Yeah.
To be moving and in our body.
It's two reflections. One is psychomotor retardation comes after you're depressed, right? Like if you're depressed, like one of the features of depression is psychomotor retardation, which is like, I'm getting the operational definition wrong, but it's roughly like you're not able to move, right? Like you're just kind of stuck there and whatnot. Right. So like we're creatures in movement. Like we have to move. We're creatures in space and time, right? And so you're moving. That's how you know you're dead, because there's nothing moving anymore, right? You know, I think there's a lot of good like through lines to that with what you're saying. And also there's something too, like when I think of like being physical, because rarely do I get to talk about like the mixture of like psychology and sports in this type of like theoretical esoteric setting. But I think of like, I've been trying to bodybuild for a long time in like weight room and stuff like that. And just like working out, and every PR is almost like I'm studying really hard for a test, and it's painful and I'm bored and like, God, I do chest flies again. Like this sucks. And then I get to a PR and it's like I got an A on a test. And I've never really made that connection until like right now. There's a tangible physicality to solving the problem of like, how do I get to the next? How do I climb this next plateau to potentially find more food for my tribe? Right? How do I solve these sort of like archetypal tribal problems that, you know, come from collective unconscious, that come from like life in the past that shaped our brain? Like, how do I solve this now here? It's like you go to the weight room and you do squats until you can't stand up, or like you go hit a racket, you know, play racquetball or something like that until you get better at it. And every little better is something like, all right, cool, I solved that problem. Like now on to the backhand, or now on to loosening the jib faster. I don't know. Is that a sailing term?
Well, yeah, it is. And I'm just thinking about all the time sailing on the college sailing team, and also all the other sailing teams, of roll tacking and how hard it is and how much work you have to do, and roll tacking every 20 seconds and the repetitiveness of it. But it pays off when you go out there and you can win and you can outskill other people. There's a rhythm and a harmony and a beauty, because depending on the boat you're on, it's a team sport, and sometimes it's not, but it matters that you do all that repetition, everything. And you just brought up another point that I was thinking about: dopamine, that when we get to that thing, we win the thing, we get to that certain level, or whatever, we achieved the thing, or we found the research that we wanted, and we found the answer, or whatever it is, we get a dopamine hit, and we don't really need anybody else to have the excitement. We have it all within ourselves. And that is really important for us to realize that that's where our curiosity comes in. That's where our physical ability, our mental ability, our emotional ability all come together, because really our body wants to keep fueled, and the dopamine is part of the fuel. And so everybody, if you're listening to John and you're as fascinated as I am, because we'll probably have many more conversations off air about this cool stuff, because we love having these conversations. And I want you to check the show notes and follow him on social media and check out all the cool things he's doing. And if you're somebody who is an entrepreneur or a leader and you're interested in the Hogan assessments, which I have personally taken, and I got validated with all kinds of things about me that other people missed. And John's like, well, you have this and you do this. And I'm like, okay, well, nobody else has nailed that. And it was correct. So if you're one of those curious people, then please contact John and he'll hook you up with that. And I can't wait to have my next meeting to learn more about what it all means. Because it, like you said, it's so deep and rich and there's so much to it. It's not a simple thing of, oh, I'm this, I'm that. It's way bigger than that. Anyway, so follow him on social media. That's what I would say. Stalk him if you need to, if you're doing what he's saying. And so I would like to know, I mean, this is kind of changing the subject a little bit.
Yeah, no worries.
But
let's bounce.
I really want to talk a little bit about a couple things. How you experience food, like taste. Okay. Do you like spicy food or whatever? Like, how does that? Because it's our fuel, it's our medicine, right? And so how does that work into your sensory input and how you experience your life?
Yeah, so it's a question no one's ever asked before. So that's cool. And it's making me like, where I'm going in my head now is I've heard of these like 68, I don't know if there's 60, there's some number of like human universals. Like, I don't even know what they are, but I remember seeing it one time. And then I thought, I wonder recently, this idea is like 5 days old. So it's not very well developed, but it's like, I wonder if there are individual differences that you could map onto human universals. Anyway, so now why I connected that is I think of what are knowing my own individual differences, thus my own personality, my own nature, how does that map onto food? And it does it two immediate ways come out. I don't like my food to touch. I don't like, I was an item eater, so I would eat all of my food in one sitting. Like it would be like all the steak, then all the potatoes, then all of the green beans. I didn't like to mix around. I wasn't like a crazy picky eater or anything, but like I didn't like cheese for some reason because of the texture for like a long time. And then I, kind of got my act together and figured out how amazing cheese is. So like there was a couple of things like that. Like I have like some texture stuff like soggy I don't like that. And these are the immediate link that I have for these is disgust. Like I get disgusted. And I know like disgust and food is probably like a very natural pairing for us. But for me, I do get disgusted with these things. I gag. Like if eggs are cold, like I can't eat those, I'll gag. I am high on conscientiousness, and there's some links to disgust sensitivity being associated with there's some studies that support that disgust sensitivity is linked to conscientiousness or specifically orderliness, I believe. So that kind of makes sense. Like that's one aspect of my nature. Here's the other thing. I'm really high in openness, and I like to explore a lot of different foods. So that's kind of weird because like I don't like spicy food. I don't. It's kind of a funny story. I'll be very brief with it. My first time meeting my father-in-law, my wife's dad, we went to a normal restaurant that had normal food, and one of them was like it was Tennessee or Nashville hot wings, and I picked those, and I was like, it's not going to be that bad. Father-in-law is from Tennessee. I was like, I'm going to impress this guy. First time I meet him, this is a good idea. Totally a good idea, right? You got a smart guy here. And I ate it and it was horrible. It was just a terrible experience. I sweated through like all my clothes. It was gross. I actually had to like bow my head in shame and ask the waiter for some milk. And so anyway, that's like one of the stories but I did that to be, exploratory. I realized, because I'm an exploratory person. So I will try a lot of different new foods. And I always I think this isn't unique to me, I don't think, but I always view food as relational. So I like to connect with people over food. I like to buy food, I think, because I'm dominant. And so anyway, all these things that are natural to my personality seem to be infused into food. So that's my first take at answering that question, I guess.
That's a good one. So other than the hot wings, what's the most memorable food you've ever eaten?
Ooh, memorable food. Man, It's nothing. It's like when you ask someone like, what's your favorite music? Like, what kind of music do you like? And you just forget about music. And you're like, I don't know. I've never listened to music before. That's kind of how I feel right now. So I can remember some steaks. I don't have like a cool, memorable food that I can think of right now. I mean, I went to Latvia and I had some cool, some like traditional Latvian food. My mother's Latvian, so I remember like that type of stuff. That was pretty fun. Um, it was very like meat and potatoes type of deal. So it wasn't like fun because it was fun. It was fun because it was in another country. I remember my 30th birthday tomahawk steak that Dr. Hogan and Wendy Hogan had with me in, I believe it was Philadelphia for a conference. And I shared it with our chief science officer, Ryan Sherman, who's also got a podcast, The Science of Personality. It's pretty good. It's not pretty good. It's very good. But anyway, yeah, I remember that. And I remember like my top steak was one that I made in Tulsa, Oklahoma in like middle of the pandemic. I finally got my steak recipe down and it was like, this is the best steak I've ever had in my life, like hands down. It was perfect. So yeah, I mean, I don't have like I once tried the beak of a,
It's okay.
a stork or something.
It's okay. It's okay, John. And all the answers are correct.
Cool. Right.
And you're reminding me, I interviewed Tom Dreesen on the phone on this show, and he was a person who opened for Frank Sinatra, as you know, for many years. And when I asked him about his most memorable food, it was a steak. But it was because he was raised in such poverty, he was never could never eat steak. And when he finally was able to eat steak, the memory of having made it to be able to eat steak.
Ooh, yeah. And so there's definitely that type of connection with the tomahawk steak. I've always wanted a tomahawk, and like there was I've made it finally. Like I'm out of the sticks. I'm in this like the Ritz-Carlton sitting with like one of the greatest psychologists of all time, with one of the greatest burgeoning psychologists of all time, and then like this other incredible woman, and like like I'm cool. This is amazing. What an experience, that type of thing. So yeah, there's definitely some emotional connections like that. Thanks. That made me feel better because like this is a bad answer.
No, none of it's a bad answer. And so I'm sitting here thinking about being that you're a multipotentialite, and I'm sure all of us now can see that very clearly. And that you also set out in your life to make a real difference in the world. You know, working with young people and helping coach people, and just the assessment work you do alone is also bringing that kind of gift to the world to help make a difference, to make the world a better place. So is there anything that I have not asked you about, or that you feel led to say before I close with our final question?
Yeah, I mean, I get this question probably once a month, and just in the nature of working with very curious people, they always like to ask, like, why do you work at Hogan? There's a variety of answers that are all very true. And then there's kind of this like, almost like this logic chain that I walk people through. And it's very personal for me. Because like I knew, and the hook is like, I knew the name of my father's boss. And I knew that name because like whenever dad had a bad day, like dad was a troubled guy. Like there's a lot to kind of unpack there. But like whenever dad had a bad day, it was usually because of the boss. And like I think back to some of the stuff that I vividly remember, and it usually started with like, blah, 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 XYZ, this person did XYZ, right? And that's why I'm in a bad mood, and that's why I'm going to go for a glass of liquor or whatever, right? Okay, so that's like the starting point, right? And then we get to Hogan, and what Hogan's trying to do a lot of things, but like one of the core is like to help people be better leaders. And that's one thing, to help people not be worse leaders, right? To help them not be bad and to help them be good. So those are two different missions, right? Like they're the same, but in the same vertical at least. Anyway, so the way that we kind of break it down, or that Dr. Hogan breaks it down and that we adopt, is the number one cause of disease is this stress, right? If you think of like all the diseases, right? And like what causes that, usually it's stress. And then the number one cause of stress is someone's immediate boss. And then so you kind of play the logic game of like, all right, so bosses are really causing problems in society if they're bad. And no boss like wakes up and is like, I'm going to be a bad boss today. I'm going to be a bad leader. So conceivably, people are actually trying to do well in their job. We really dislike being incompetent, right? So people are trying to do well. There's like a 50 to 70% failure rate for most managers, first line leaders and leaders. So, okay, so like this is kind of a mess. And what we see at Hogan is we are actually, and the people using Hogan specifically, I really do think specifically it's Hogan, are really trying to help people not be as bad as they could be or as they are. And bad's it's too low resolution of a word, but you know what I mean as I kind of in context as I explain it. And they're trying to help them be better. And that does have a trickle down to like, if I can help this person be a better boss, their direct reports are going to have a better time of it at work. They're going to be happier and more engaged. Maybe more stuff will be done and like life will be better. And in some cases, if they're a better leader, this is morbid, but like if they're a better leader, less people die. Like that's really true in a lot of industries.
Right.
And then, so then that means that like the family functions better. And then that means there's less traumatized kids. And, you know, like, I know it's very, it's very long-winded and detached and whatnot, but like, I truly feel like, I mean, like, I really do think we're doing like society, like good societal work here to help people fairly be put in jobs that are, that work for them and to help them understand how they can be better and not worse. So big, long, rambly way of saying, like, I really believe in the stuff that we're doing. It's not like the corporate party line from Hogan. It's just like how I found meaning in what we're doing. Like one of the ways I found meaning in what we're doing. And that's usually what I find connects people most and they connect with most with people. So that's like that's the thing that I want to say. Outside of Go Gators, right?
Right.
So,
Go Gators. That's a given. And one of the things that I'm thinking about when you say that too, is that being a better leader, right? And reducing stress and harm and knowingly or unknowingly is a huge way to make a real difference in the world, not only in that leader's life, but in all the people that are influenced by that person personally and professionally. And then, like you said, it like radiates out. I just imagine it radiating out, you know, and so I think it's important that we're mindful about those kinds of things and that we pay attention, especially as gifted people, because we tend to be intense and, you know, and we go really fast and we connect the dots and we're synthesizing quickly and we process differently than other people. So it takes even an added layer of understanding and ways to engage in the world so that we can be more successful and more satisfied in what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said.
Yeah.
Very well said.
I think it's totally true. So your final question of the show, I could talk to you forever, but I'm paying attention to all your generosity and your time and your information.
Yeah.
And so the final question is, if we're going to put a billboard up for the entire world to see with your personal statement, what are you putting on that billboard?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a Christian. So it would be trust Christ. Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. And my encounters with him have been the absolutely most meaningful things that I've ever encountered. And so it would be that. That's what I think all this is kind of like working towards. So yeah, that would be that'd be the billboard.
And that's really
hopefully, yeah.
The Christ means inner light. So it means allowing that inner light to emerge, which is exactly what you're doing. And so it fits for everybody.
Yeah.
Whether
I know.
You want to personify it,
right.
Or do you want to look at it metaphysically? It is an answer that goes with everything you've just said perfectly, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I was lost for a really, really long time. And I don't mean like esoterically lost. I mean, like I'm trying to develop my own Nietzschean like values and whatnot. And I really just came back to like my life is not good. Like it has gotten worse since I sort of stepped away. And I think as I've understood like psychology more specifically, and I see so many ties to the Bible, and that's been like a through line. I very rarely ever get to talk about it, but that would be the billboard, right? And hopefully not like one of those like, you know, deep South like billboards of like, hell is
right.
You know what I mean? Like,
I see those when I
oh yeah, from Florida, right? Like Central Florida billboards about hell. It's always fun to see.
I see them in South Carolina when I drive down to Florida. I'm like, oh my word. Because there's so much more to living
I
a
know.
spiritual life than fear.
Yeah.
And fear is not even the goal.
Yeah, exactly.
We could digress on that. But we're not going to. And so I want to thank you, John, for being on the show, for being here with me and spending all this time. And probably you'll end up having to come back because there's so many more things I wanted to talk about. But I wanted to take care of and pay attention to your generosity. So remember, everybody, you can find John's links in the show notes and go follow him and hunt him down. It's kind of fun. And you can see that there's so much richness, and multipotentialites, we do make a difference in the world. So this is just one powerful example. In fact, I have goosebumps even thinking about it right now. So remember, everybody, to keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you are a rock star. You are here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there and let your light shine, and remember that you are here with greatness and value. You are beautiful, you are lovable, and you are capable. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, this is Dianne and John saying, be well.